Hello, everybody. I hope you're having a great Thursday. Very excited to be here again today for another investor spotlight chat. We today have an industry expert with us, so I'll introduce Michael in a moment. But if you don't know who I am, my name is Natasha Phipps. I am the team leader and investor and investment specialist realtor of Phipps Real Estate Group at CIR Realty. And we're excited to be here today. So we like to use these interviews, talks to give you some value, answer any questions you may have, and talk about a specific topic that will benefit you in your real estate investing journey. Whether you're in Calgary or not, a lot of this stuff will translate into any market. So today we are talking about renovations and working with contractors and secondary suites, which is, we've been waving this flag for many years here about secondary suites here in Calgary, but today will be no different. So my guest today is Michael Fedun from Final Cut Creations here he's based out of Cochrane, just outside of Calgary. And we're going to talk about secondary suites today. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it should be great. So I usually like to start off first. So why I like to recommend you as a contractor over other contractors is that you're a real estate investor. And we all know that if you are working with any trades or professionals, if they have an investor mindset first, that will really go a long way for your experience. So tell us a little bit about you and your background in the investment space and how that ties into your contracting business.
Yeah, okay, sure. So I decided at one point that I wanted to diversify my investment strategy. And I had heard that real estate investing is an option. And so I stumbled into a show home in Cochrane, and just so happened that the person that was hosting the show home had real estate investment as well. And the model that I walked into was conducive to suite, which means that we didn't have to do a lot to get a separate entrance. The way that the back door came into the house, I could just separate the main floor from the back entry, and then it could just be a straight run down the stairs, and I could build a suite down there. And I'd already started Final Cut. And so I'm a journeyman carpenter, and so I have this renovations company, and I thought I could really get a lot of sweat equity out of putting in my own work into suiting it. And so, yeah, my wife and I, we ran home and we did our numbers, which we do nothing about how to really run numbers or analyze neighborhoods or any of the things that seasoned veterans know how to do. Luckily, it all worked out, and we suited the property, and we've got a really good tenant profile in there now, and we know what to look for, and that worked out really well, and that just led to the next property. And so our strategy is to purchase new home construction and then take possession and suite the basement.
And that's something we don't talk about very often, but is an excellent strategy, because you're kind of getting the best of both worlds of, new construction, also doing some sort of lift to the property. You're essentially have the ability to do some sort of burr on the property, improvement to the property. And, but often when we think new construction, we go straight to, okay, we're going to get everything purpose built. So you've kind of joined those two together, which is really interesting.
That's right.
And how has this translated over into your contracting business? So you help other investors as well who want to do similar things and grow their portfolio with secondary suites as well. Yeah,
that's right. So now with my experience suiting, a few of my own properties, I've kind of started to really build the knowledge of what's necessary, what really isn't necessary, where can you get the most bang for your buck, and what are some of the strategies on how you could build the suite to attain a certain tenant profile, depending on what level you're at and what the house is like, what's the neighborhood like, and I sort of work with clients that are interested in suiting properties on that strategy if they are interested in, my input. Sometimes they have their own strategy already in place, and so they just say, this is what I want, and we execute it. But it was basically, Final Cut started as strictly a renovations company, renovating people's homes, kitchens, bathrooms, the whole house, doing small additions. But in that real estate investment world in my personal life kind of then flowed into Final Cut, where I thought, well, I could really take what I've done personally and integrate that into Final Cut as well, and call ourselves an authority in secondary suite construction. So that's what we do now, is we also market ourselves as specialists in secondary suite construction.
Yes, and that's why I recommend you all the time. When someone first asks me who to talk to first, I always give them your name first. Because just because you're calling up a contractor or someone who does renovations doesn't mean that they are familiar with or has gone through putting secondary suites in or converting illegal to legal suites. That's a specialty, in my opinion. That is not just something that you're going to get the same experience no matter who you call. Why don't we talk about that? I know
Sure.
We've talked about secondary suites for years here. That's probably not going to go anywhere for years to come. And the reason secondary suites are so interesting for investors in Calgary is, well, and beyond, is really to have a secondary source of income out of your property is how you get those really great cash flow numbers in residential real estate. So secondary suites are kind of really the name of the game here. And this can apply to detached houses or semi-detached properties, or half a duplex. So either one works. But why don't we talk a little bit about what the scenario is right now in Calgary for secondary suites? And if I'm an investor and I want to own a secondary suite, can you tell us the difference between if I'm just going to buy a house and add a new suite, or if I'm going to buy a house with an illegal suite, and what work is going to encompass those two things?
Yeah, so I think if you're looking to get in and you have a limited amount of funds for your down payment, and then the legalization, which I recommend. I don't think that anybody should operate in legal suite. I think there's insurance challenges there potentially, and well, that's a whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
I think if you're looking for a property and you want to legalize an existing suite, that's definitely the least expensive way to get in. And you don't have to do as much work. So you can get in there, and your contractor can do the necessary work to get it legalized. Right now is what they're calling the amnesty period in Calgary, and that's going to the end of this year with no talk of extending that. It's already been extended once. So we're in this extension period right now. And the whole, I think, point for Calgary was to try to get a lot of those illegal suites legalized so that they were safe for the tenants that were living in them, because they weren't meeting certain code requirements, because they weren't built with those code requirements in mind. Because the people that built them didn't want to spend the money to do those safety renovations. And so it really depends on the property and how it was built initially. But really what the city is saying is, let's not worry too much about meeting building code requirements. Let's just meet the fire safety code requirements, so that at least the people that are living in there are going to be safe, are going to be able to get out or be rescued in case of a fire.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And that's huge. And I don't want to gloss over your point that you should not be operating illegal suites. Several years ago, it seemed like that's all there was. Like everyone had illegal suites. There was no legal suites. I think when they started the legal suite registry, there was like less than 50 properties in there for all of Calgary. Right now we're approaching 6,000, I believe. I keep meaning to check what the number is the last few weeks.
I don't know what it is.
It is a public registry, the secondary suite registry. Anyone can go on there. So if you're looking at a property, and just because it says legal on it doesn't necessarily mean that it is the other thing. Always go check the registry. If it's legal, it will be there. The address will be there. So we've come a long way in the last few years in terms of where we were, but we still have a long way to go, in my opinion. 6,000 maybe sounds like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, I think we're still a ways away. Why you should not be operating illegal suites. You made a great point about insurance. Also banks, like if you're legalizing a property and you have a legal suite, when you go to either qualify for the mortgage, and it already has a legal suite, that'll help you qualify. Or when you go to get your next mortgage, you can say, hey, here's my other property. It has a legal suite in it. These are the leases in it. Like that goes a long way in terms of your ratios, and they can take that income into consideration. So really great point. And also, you don't want to get fined and shut down by the city. That's the other thing.
Well, yeah, definitely. If they find out that you're operating an illegal suite, then they're going to ask you to pull out the range so that it doesn't have a kitchen in it. So then it's not really a suite. And who's going to want to rent from you if they don't have a kitchen? And so, or be fined, and then you're looking at maybe just offloading this property now because you don't want to put in the work to legalize it. So I say just try to get it done right the first time from the get-go, and then you're off to the races and you don't have to worry about it later.
Exactly, 100%. And you can sleep at night. The other thing that the city's done last few years is tenants are a lot more aware of this, and they've been educated also to know the difference. Not all of them, but a lot of them, it does come up. And so it's beneficial to you to obviously have your sleep at night ability, but also just to be providing the right type of housing to the market. And a lot of these illegal suites out there were just slapped together. They're not necessarily set up to be safe or comfortable, and they're potentially really cold in the winter months and stuff as well. So doing it right is always going to pay off. So right now you can either legalize something you have. If you own an illegal suite, please like start the process now. Call the city, get the ball rolling. And if you wait till next year, it's going to be so much more difficult and so much more expensive. So the other point is you could go buy a house like you did, and whether it's a resale property or brand new, and put in a brand new suite. So now you're talking about, purpose built, like that has so many benefits. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so whether it's a new pre-construction sale, so you're the first owner of the property, or it's had several owners and has lived a long life, you can suite the property, but not just any property. You really want to do some due diligence, go through the property with somebody who knows something about suiting properties and has done it before, so they know what they're looking for. So it's not just buying a house at a great price and then starting the suite process. I think part of finding the right property is going to be, obviously the price point, but is it conducive to putting a suite in the first place? How much is it going to cost? Is it a walkout, and then you don't have to put in a door or a side entry? Or are we going to have to dig down next to the foundation and put in a side entrance? And depending on what the staircase is like on the house, if it has a midpoint landing, we don't have to dig as deep. Then we can just go a few stairs down and go in through the side of the house. But if it's a straight flight down, we might have to dig all the way down to the footing and then go through the concrete foundation to put a side entrance. So if you have options like, I could buy house A, and it could work, or I could buy house B and it could also work. You got to take a look at, which one is going to be less expensive to do some of these things, like putting in a side entrance.
Absolutely. And all that comes down to what you paid for the property. It's okay if the numbers still work to do that, but the numbers have to work, right? And so you need to know what those numbers are and have your team of experts, like you said, who can at least give you a ballpark number. Your investor focused realtor should have some idea of what floor plans and layouts work and what's best. And if you can find one that's easier than another for the same price, or then absolutely you want to go for that. So knowing what to look for in terms of layout, that's key.
Yeah, layout. And then, some of the older homes, you may go down into the basement and think, okay, well, we'll take out this wall if there's already some walls there, or, well, we'll just move this column or change this beam. It may not always be that easy.
Yeah.
We'll take the furnace and we'll move it over into the corner to give us more open space. That might always be as easy as you think. And so, having, say, a contractor like myself to come in, let's say maybe you don't close on the deal, but you put in an offer and you kind of lock that down. And then you call me up and say, hey, I've got a conditional sale and just wanted you to get your eyes on this place. I'll give you some of the ideas that I have. Tell me whether this is going to be possible, plausible, and what kind of a budget should I be looking at to build it out. And I can on site say, hey, this is going to cost you somewhere in the $50,000 to $60,000 range, or it's going to be more because I've got a bunch of structural work I have to do to be able to get the layout that you want. Maybe this isn't quite the property then.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is not just about the property as well. We need to consider things like parking and the lot and obviously the location. Parking is one that people tend to forget about because they're focused just on the inside of the property. But depending on the city and the municipality, there might be different requirements for parking. So if you're doing secondary suites in your area, make sure you know what those requirements are. In the city of Calgary, you need to have 2 parking spots on the lot. Not like street parking does not count. And also tandem parking does not count unless you got a relaxation or something for that. But they want typically 2 full parking spots. And I think in Cochrane, is it 3?
It's 3.
Yeah.
3 off street, and you can park tandem.
Right.
So if you've got a front drive, front attached garage, you actually have 4 off. If it's a 2-car, you have 4 off street spots. So you've got 2 in the garage and then 2 on the driveway. But if you're looking at a duplex,
right,
which has a 1-car garage and then the spot on the driveway, now you only have 2 spots. Some people have been widening the driveway on the duplex so they can get 2 cars. Now you qualify for the 3-car requirement. However, the town of Cochrane, you have to apply for a relaxation and they're not awarding them. Some people have had to go through some serious fights because they've purchased the property with the intention of renting the whole thing out and then they couldn't. And yeah, it's been challenging.
Yeah.
So and definitely knowing the parking requirements is important.
Yeah, it's important. And you should be able to find this information. Like, if you can't find it during that, week or 10 days you have for conditions. Like, these are the things you need to be looking at. Even parking requirements, like what constitutes a parking spot, might be different if you're comparing cities and towns. So how much width do you need in a parking stall? If there's an exact measurement for that. So look it up on the city website, make sure you're measuring it so that you're not having to go through these extra steps and causing that extra stress mostly. Because if you cannot do what you want to do with this property, now you've bought something that, now what? Like now we're selling it. We have to figure out plan B or whatever. So doing as much of that as you can upfront during that condition period is the way to go. And call and ask, and I always tell people, call and ask yourself as well. Like, go talk to them directly yourself and get those answers that you need. So yeah, parking's a big one. And what else was I just thinking about? Also the permitting. Sorry.
In Calgary, you need to have an amenity space as well for both tenants. So there needs to be some outdoor amenity space in Calgary. So if there's a really small lot and a big house and there isn't much yard space, you may not qualify for the development permit.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think we're going further into, what you need to consider when suiting a property that doesn't have a current suite in it, an illegal suite. So we're not just thinking about illegal, we're not considering just legalizing at this point. We're actually developing the house into a new use. And so to do that, you need to apply for a development permit. And so that is a discretionary use on most R1 lots in Calgary. And in Cochrane. I think of most municipalities now is a discretionary. So you have to apply for a development permit, which doesn't change the zoning of the lot, but just allows you to be able to build a suite. Then after you get your development permit, and different municipalities have different protocols as to how it gets approved. Some of them take longer than others. And then after you get that development permit, then you apply for your building permit. Your building permit is what's going to be used to request inspections and have other permits attached to it, like your electrical permit and plumbing and gas permit. So
exactly. Yeah, that's super helpful. And if the other requirement that the city does have too is they do have a lot width. It has to meet from the frontage to the midpoint. There is a measurement of 9 meters. You have to, most lots do have that. I have seen some though that do not. So just again, check your real property report, make sure that you're aware what you're buying in terms of the lot, and that it does meet the requirements as well.
There are some RC1N lots. Got to be careful. Those ones might be too narrow to be approved for your development permit on a basement suite. So something to be careful for as well. Yeah.
So, okay, so existing suites, we are legalizing to fire code, and we, talked about that. Much less to do in those projects. Downside might be you're kind of retrofitting something that wasn't necessarily purpose built for that, but low cost entry, which is really great. Deadline is approaching for that. So if you want to go through that strategy or legalize something you have, like you need to kind of get on it here. The end of the year is going to be here before we know it. As someone just texted me this morning saying it's almost Christmas. So we got to get on it. So please don't sleep on that. Get moving on that. Or moving into next year, we're going to be, or even now, you could, be buying a property and adding a new suite to it as well. Either one works, and it all comes down to the numbers, like everything else, working the numbers, making sure you're not over renovating, overspending, and losing your cash flow, which is the whole reason usually why you're going into a suited property. I think we should talk about how to choose a contractor, and there is a lot of concern for people often if they've never worked with contractors or managed a site. Like it's a little scary, it can be a little intimidating. What do you advise people in that scenario when they're talking to contractors, and how to gauge who might be a good fit for them?
Yeah, well, good fit is, I think, a really good point. You regardless of qualifications and licensing and all those other things, which I think I can touch on those as well, and people can make notes on what they should be asking their contractor. But I think the prime, like one of the first things is what is your contractor's personality like, and can you see yourself working with this person? You're going to be spending the next month if you're maybe retrofitting something, but 4 months if you're building a suite in this property. And there's going to be a lot of back and forth. There's going to be a lot of conversations, a lot of potentially changes during the process. And how approachable is your contractor? How available is this person? And do you see yourself working with him or her? So I think that would be like the huge one thing I would just really, get into a conversation with this person, see how they answer questions and how easygoing are they. And then beyond that, beyond personality and whether you think that you guys jive, you want to make sure that they have the proper experience and qualifications. So there's quite a few. Like the first and foremost is they have to have a license to work in the municipality if there is one required. So like Calgary, Okotoks, Airdrie, Cochrane, those all have business license requirements. So they have to have a business license to work in that municipality, and so do their subtrades. So, and make sure that they have the right license in place. There's another license called a Service Alberta license. So a Service Alberta license is a license that requires the contractor to be bonded. That is needed. So a contractor has to have a Service Alberta license if they are going to take prepayment, which most do. But be careful, because most do not have a Service Alberta license. And so it is a requirement, but Service Alberta doesn't, or very rarely, chases after contractors that don't have it.
Right.
But you're open to, if the contractor's taking a deposit and they haven't done any work yet, then they could potentially disappear with your money, and you don't have any recourse because they don't have a Service Alberta license. They're not bonded. Yeah. So that bonding means that the contractor had to post $80,000 bond on most general contractors. Smaller contractors like plumbers, electricians, it would be a smaller fee. But for someone like myself, you have to post $80,000 to Service Alberta, or you have an insurance company post on your behalf, and the contractor makes payments on that post of 80. So what happens is, if you do have an issue with the contractor where you give them a deposit and they don't show up to do the work and they went to Mexico instead, then you have recourse. You can go to Service Alberta and say, this is what happened. I worked with this licensed contractor and he disappeared off the face of the earth. And so Service Alberta then can take the money from the bond and return your deposit.
That's huge. Because that's usually people's horror stories, right? That's usually their fear is they give a deposit, or, I mean, unfortunately, I've heard people like prepay everything. Don't prepay everything. But if you're giving them a deposit, you need to know what your options are and what the recourse is if they disappear. And usually that's the stories I hear. I gave them X amount and never heard from them ever again. And unfortunately, when they're not, bonded, licensed, insured, they can just pop up somewhere else under a different name and away they go. So
that's right.
That's super advice, and will save you potentially, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. If you have a contractor that's asking you to give them $10,000 as a deposit, and you ask for a Service Alberta license number for a prepaid contractor, and they say they don't have one, then don't give them a deposit. And if, unfortunately, that might mean that they're not going to take the job.
Right.
So you'll have to find another contractor, but you may have dodged a bullet. Sure. So, just understand that if you're giving somebody a deposit and they don't have that license, that you're taking a risk that you could lose that money and there's no recourse.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a Service Alberta license. There's trade certifications. So I'm a journeyman carpenter. I have a journeyman carpenter on staff, and I have registered apprentices. And I work with certified licensed subtrades like electricians, plumbers, etc. So that's important, because those trades that are certified and have a journeyman or a master electrician designation are aware of what the code requirements are for your project. Somebody that rolls in that isn't a certified contractor may not be aware of all of these code requirements. They haven't gone through the educational process that gets you to that point where you understand what to do depending on what you're building. So working with certified licensed trades is important, and making sure that if it's a general contractor, that they're bringing on people that are certified trades as well. Also, make sure that the general contractor that you're working with has liability insurance. So that's going to cover not just your property, but also the materials that the contractor brings on site, and any of the contractor's tools as well. If they don't have that and something happens at the property, materials go missing, tools go missing, something happens in the house, you could go after the contractor. But if he doesn't have any money and he doesn't have any insurance, you're going to be like trying to squeeze water from a rock. It's just not, you're not going to get anything out of them. And so having liability insurance is important.
Asking all those questions. Right?
Yeah, having all, and kind of going, okay, I want to check that they have this, WCB, really important. I wouldn't just ask a contractor, do you have WCB coverage? And then trust that when they say yes, that they actually have it, because, you know, they might not even realize maybe they haven't made their premium payment and they actually aren't covered.
Yeah.
You know, so ask them for a WCB clearance letter. It's easy. They can go on to the site, they can print one out and they can email it to you, and it'll say that they're up to date on their premium payments and they then have WCB coverage. That's really important, because if somebody gets hurt at your house where these people are working, the employees of that contractor could potentially go over after you as the homeowner to pay their physio and chiro and whatever other occupational health therapy. Like, you don't want to be stuck with that bill. No. And so make sure that they have a WCB clearance letter for you.
That's a really great tangible thing to get.
And it's easy.
And it's easy. Yeah, that's exactly right. I remember when I was working for my dad's company, that was one of the things every month we would do, is make sure all the guys had their clearance letters, and WCB would notify us when they weren't. The way we had it set up, we'd get an automated email that would say, so-and-so has not paid their premium, they are not clear, right? So this is something they're constantly aware of. They should be aware of. So if they're not, and they're just kind of sending you fluff, then that's certainly a red flag.
Yeah.
Also too, like, once you start, okay, so let's say you found the contractor, you're starting the project, you're moving forward. What is, the advice you give in terms of like, what's reasonable? Because some people are like, oh, I don't want to bother the contractor. I don't want to be like, watching over them too much, or, what's a realistic thing to expect in terms of communication, checking on the job site. What should the investor be doing, or the homeowner be doing as the project unfolds?
Yeah, so I think once you've engaged in a contract, which is important as well, I don't want to skip over that.
Yes,
I don't have many more things to add to this, but definitely get a contract in place, and make sure the contract has the details of what is going to be done, and what the payment terms are. So we're going to get paid on milestones, which is how I work. As project is completed, different sections, framing's done, you release a check to me, and drywall's done, you release a check. And as we go through that way, then you're not paying for stuff on a time frame, but rather on a completion. And so once you've got a contract in place and you're going to start the project, in my case, you'll have paid me a deposit. That money is going to go towards getting materials on site and mobilizing subtrades, and then we get started. Of course, I won't have been able to put together a contract or a price without going through and having a floor plan drawn up if we don't have one, getting the design laid out, selecting finishes, all that kind of stuff. So there's quite a bit of work that goes into it before I even say put shovels in the ground, so to speak. We're doing a floor plan, and then we're coming up with the final price, and then we've got a contract. Now we're starting the work. I invite the client to come down every day if they want to come down every day, if they really want to see what's going on. It's all based on their comfort level of what's happening with their contractor and their comfort level of going through a renovation. If you've never been through a renovation before, you probably want to get in there more often than not, because especially if you've never worked with the contractor, I would be checking in to make sure that things are happening the way they said they were going to happen, and they said that the framing is done. Is the framing done? And so if the contractor is telling you, leave me alone, stay away, you've been here every day this week, I'd be concerned. I would be setting the person straight and saying, no, this is my house. I'm going to come here. I'm going to be here for 20 minutes every day, and I just want to see what's going on. Sure. I'm fine with that as a contractor. I know that this is someone's either their primary residence, or it's an investment that they've got a lot of money in. They want to make sure that it's happening properly. Now there can be like overwhelming clients, so if they're coming and they're hanging out and they're watching us work and how, not that there's like trade secrets, but more so, and I'm sure everybody understands this, it's not a great feeling when you've got somebody kind of standing over you,
No, you don't want to have
while you're working. And especially if you're trying to get work done and you've got the client saying, well, so why are you doing it like that? And then why are you doing it like that? And it's like, okay, well,
Agreed.
I'd really like to get this done. So I think that there's a time and a place for the client to be. I would make arrangements with the contractor. So say, hey, when's a good time to come by? Is it first thing in the morning? Is it at the end of the day? What time? And for me personally, I like it at the end of the day. First thing in the morning, I'm getting trades ready. We have a trade meeting. We go over what needs to get done, what's going to be, where are we on the timeline? And I'm kind of getting everybody organized to say when to get going and get started to work. And then I'm kind of either I'm on site doing work, or I can be on site at the end of the day. So I like to see what's been accomplished. And it's a great time to really meet with the client and let them know what we've accomplished, maybe what some of the hurdles that we've come up against and what those solutions are, what the options are. So I'd like to take that time at the end of the day to kind of say, hey, we came across this. So a little bit of a roadblock. We need to make a decision. Are we going to do it like this or like this? And these are the costs involved, or what have you.
For sure. And I think that's really good advice. First of all, you're starting a relationship with these people, like you said. The very first piece of advice, this is why. Because the relationship is going to come into play here when you want to have these conversations and when you want to check in. Do not hover over people. I agree with you. Nobody likes that, but do check in. And, even say you couldn't make it there, even, stop by in the evening, just take a quick walk through. If you've been there a few days, like you don't necessarily have to be there when the contractor's there, but go check for yourself, especially at those milestones. Go check that the drywall's up, go check that, XYZ has been done for your own protection and just to see what's going on. So you can't just, hire someone and then go to Hawaii and come back in 3 months, in my opinion. You need to be involved.
I think you'd really have to have a really good comfort level and some experience with that contractor to take off to Hawaii and come back and hope that everything's going to be done. Yes. And you would have to feel really comfortable with the idea that you're going to be basically giving your contractor executive privilege to make decisions with your money, because I don't think there's a project I've ever worked on that we haven't had to make a change at some point and it has a financial implication, and I need the client to make a decision. Which way are we going to go with this? And unless we're working in a new construction home where you're the first owner and the basement is a clean slate, I mean, those ones are quite predictable. There aren't really any unforeseens in that. It's typically in older homes, maybe there's already an existing basement, it's just not a suite, and now I got a demo and there's surprises.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. You want to be able to communicate with that contractor, know what's going on. Okay, such good advice. We're gonna kind of maybe wrap this up here. I think one more thing I'd like to touch on and get your take on is the impact of the supply chain on renovations and projects this year, and where you see that going. Is it improving, or things getting worse? What's your kind of like, you're in the trenches every day. What's your kind of feeling with this, and what's going to happen as we move into winter next year, do you think?
Yeah, there have been challenges over the last year and a half, and it didn't start right away. It took a little while. But then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, manufacturing facilities aren't making things as quickly or as many as they were before, and it's affected every sector of the construction industry, some harder than others. Lumber, for example, was probably the hardest hit, and the consumer paid for it if they wanted to continue to move forward with their project. That softened a bit now, and although lumber prices aren't back down to where they were, they aren't quite as ludicrous as they were 2 months ago. Supply chain, there are still challenges. Unfortunately, that doesn't look like it's going to change in the next year. I think we're still going to see, and this is what I've been hearing from a lot of other manufacturers or suppliers, is they're having a really hard time with materials, getting materials. And if it isn't because of COVID, it's some other natural disaster that's affected the construction industry in some way. There's a shortage of plywood and OSB because of a fire in a factory in Texas that made the resin to bind all of the materials together. And so like you couldn't get some stuff. So things just weren't getting built as a result. Special like appliances.
Appliances, big one.
You know, hard. Now more and more appliances have a computer board of some sort in it, and they're having issues with manufacturing computer chips in China and supplying them to manufacturers. And so now you don't get to choose whatever refrigerator you want. You have to choose whatever is available on the floor, in stock. And manufacturers, instead of making 10 different models of refrigerators, they've basically cut like 75% of their options because they want to at least be able to make something. So they're only making really their best sellers. So if you're looking for something that's unique, you're probably not getting it.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of been my experience as well. I don't see it. It seems like every week it's a different thing. It's like, okay, this week we have no mirrors, you know, now there's no fridges, and it's just one thing after another. And so be patient with your contractor as well with this stuff. This is very real world things happening. This is outside of their control. You may need to choose something else or pivot or adjust a little bit as these things happen, or there may be delays as well. So when you're planning for a project, make sure you're building in some time and delays. If an extra few weeks or month or two is going to ruin things for you, then maybe that's something to consider. So really good advice there. Do you have anything else to add, or is that it? Oh, how can people reach you? And yeah, I'm sure you're going to have some follow-up questions. So tell us about your website and how they can reach you.
Yep. So you can find out more about Final Cut Creations at www.finalcutcreations.com. And there is our portfolio, our contact page, and a little bit about us. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram.
And a lot of investing events. You're around. I said, and a lot of the investing events you're around as well.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a RAIN member. I sponsor RAIN events from time to time, so you'll find us there as well. Awesome. And then on the Phipps Facebook page, and I'll be on there commenting. I'm not always answering but anything that I feel like I have a background in, I'll definitely have a response if people asking questions relating to secondary suite construction, in my opinion, about what's the best way to sound dampen the suite, or should I be using double drywall on the ceiling or not, or how far should I take it? And I'm open to answering all those kinds of questions.
Yes, thank you for your contributions to our group. It goes a long way. And thank you for your time today. I hope you guys found this valuable. We really appreciate your input and advice, and you gave some really great tips and tricks and some really common steps you can put into place when you're hiring a contractor. And please reach out to Final Cut Creations as well, and let's support Michael and his business. So thank you so much. And I think we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah, thank you, Natasha.
Have a good rest of your day.
Yes, you too. Take care.
Bye-bye.